off of Jeremiah's neck, and he broke it.
And Hananiah spoke in the presence of all the people, saying, Thus saith the sovereign, even so will I break the yoke off of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, from the neck of all nations within the space of 2 years full.
We're going back to 2 full years. That's the second time.
And the prophet Jeremiah went his way.
I said the prophet Jeremiah did what?
Went his way.
Now think about that. Hananiah keeps saying 2 years. The Most High, Jeremiah know, and the Most High know what?
70 years.
70 years. So why is this important?
There's a contradiction.
There's a contradiction because the Most High said 70 years, and what is this prophet doing?
False prophecy.
It's false prophecy in the sense that the Most High already established 70 years. In other words, you cannot leave captivity before your sentence is over. But we're going to keep reading. We're going to find out this. Go ahead.
Then the word of the sovereign came unto Jeremiah the prophet. After that, Hananiah the prophet had broken the yoke from off of the neck of the prophet Jeremiah, saying, Go and tell Hananiah, saying, Thus saith the sovereign, Thou hast broken the yoke of wood, but thou shalt make for them yokes of iron. For thus saith the sovereign of hosts, the set apart one of Israel, I have put a yoke of iron upon the neck of all these nations, that they may serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and they shall serve him, and I have given him the beasts of the field also.
Okay, the Most High, he said he did what? He put this yoke on all the nations, not on all the nations and Israel. In other words, did he not do the same thing he did in Egypt? Didn't he say he made Egypt and Pharaoh great? Why did he make him great?
So he could destroy them.
So when he break him down, Israel will see that he's greater even than the strongest or the greatest power on the earth, which was Egypt at that time.
That's right.
He said he made Egypt great, and he made them great for a reason. So when it was time to deliver Israel, guess what? They will see that the Elohim that they serve is even greater than the Elohims of the Pharaoh. So you see him doing the same thing with Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar did. But what you see here, Jeremiah already know the word of the Most High, and that it would prophesy there'll be that 70 years. But what did Hananiah not know?
The word of the Lord.
So now he's coming to bring the word to the people. He's trying to get them to come out of captivity what? Early before the time. So when the Most High sentence you, you have to fulfill that sentence. Then he said, I'm the sovereign thy Elohim who changes not, neither does the Son of Man.
Hallelujah.
So now let's keep reading.
Hallelujah.
Verse 15. Then said the prophet Jeremiah unto Hananiah the prophet, Hear now, Hananiah the sovereign hath not sent thee, but thou makest this people to trust in a lie. Therefore, thus saith the sovereign, Behold,
Hold on. What lie did he make the people to trust in?
That the captivity will be up there.
That they captivity to be up when?
in 2 years.
In 2 years. Okay, go ahead.
Therefore, thus saith the sovereign, Behold, I will cast thee from off the face of the earth this year. Thou shalt die, because thou hast taught rebellion against the sovereign. So Hananiah the prophet died the same year in the 7th month.
The same year in the 7th month. Now reading this is important because where's Israel today?
Captivity.
In captivity. So he's saying he's going to gather us from where? The four corners of the lands where we were scattered captives. So get Deuteronomy 30 for me one more time.
Yes, sir.
But see, what happened is we have assimilated so and become as a nation. Israel always forget they're in captivity because you can vote now, because you can go sit in these schools with these folks, because you can go to a restaurant and eat with them, do all these things. And, let me tell y'all something. When we return to our land, there will be no other government in there.
That's right.
First of all, that land is unclean. It's defiled. The land has to be purged just like the people have to be purged.
That's right.
The Most High scattered us here because he wants to esteem us where? In the place where he has scattered us.
He gets the glory.
Guess what? He scattered Yahudims over in the land. He said he scattered us in the four corners. But the ones that he scattered there, those are the ones he wants there. He scattered you here for a reason. As you wake up, your commission is to spread the word, to get the others to return their heart back to the Father. Start at Deuteronomy 30 again. We're going to start at first.
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the sovereign thy Elohim have driven thee, and shall return unto the sovereign thy Elohim, and shall obey his voice, according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul, then the sovereign thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations which the sovereign thy Elohim
He
has
said he's
gathered.
going to turn out what?
Turn the captivity.
Then he said, we going to gather?
And then I will return and gather.
He said he would do what?
Return and gather.
He would do what?
Return and
He
gather.
would return and gather. He would return and gather. He's returning and gathering you from where?
Among the nations.
Among the nations when he had scattered you. Not when we uprooted and went. He scattered us here for a reason. And what the importance of all this, what I want y'all to see is, what's our reason for going over to that land and leaving here? Most times, it's out of fear. Somebody that told you to flee Babylon for the impending destruction that is coming. First of all, we have to get an understanding of who Babylon is and Mystery Babylon. Because I can guarantee you, Saudi Arabia and the Arab nation.
That's right.
I can guarantee you that. But see, when we have a lack of understanding, see, let me tell y'all something. This is why I tell y'all, stay off YouTube, stop eating off of all of these tables. Listen to what I tell you. Didn't Mashiach say, my sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow? If you trust that the Most High sent me here to be your leader, guess who you need to listen to? Me. How many times have I led y'all wrong? Because let me tell y'all one thing about moral. Anything I say, we're going to deal with precept upon precept, line upon line. That way, here a little, there a little. Because let me tell you something about these scripts. Y'all notice what I'm saying? You see a pattern of the same thing happening over and over?
Exactly.
Because this is what he said supposed to happen. So, if we say we're supposed to flee Babylon on our own, with no instruction, without his hand, you have to be able to show that pattern from the beginning of this book to the end of the book. Can we show that pattern anytime when Israel got up on their own without instruction and fled captivity?
Hallelujah.
Can we show that and prove that pattern with the scriptures? But then he said, out of the mouths of what?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 witnesses? Have I not given y'all 3 witnesses? Adam and Eve in the garden, Israel exiled in their land, Sodom and Gomorrah, us coming up out of Egypt. You always have the witnesses, you always have the instructions. You always have who doing the gathering. Name me one time when Israel was in captivity that the Most High didn't have anything to do with it, where he didn't gather. We have to be able to show that pattern, y'all. Because I'm going to tell y'all what Moray doing in here tonight. I'm trying to save some lives. Didn't he say, you that seek to save your life, you shall lose it in the end? So you mean to tell me the man that put you in captivity can't deliver you and bring you out of captivity? So I need Elder Ricard here, or somebody from GOCC, because we need to get side by side and get in this book. Because that's a teaching that's going out over the internet stuff. It's off, y'all. That man that got them folk over there in Egypt and all these places, they stranded. Some of them folk crying to this day, so they never should have left his land. They can't get home. And guess what he done did? He done went incognito, and you can see videos of him, but nobody know where he is, but his right-hand man. Nobody can find him, know he at. after he done took thousands and tens of thousands of dollars from these people. But they don't read.
Trusting in man.
They trust in man. You have to get in these scriptures. That's why I know, even when I saw that video of him, and he adamant about fleeing Babylon. I said, yeah, you gave them folk them few little verses. You didn't go down and read and figure out when. He's telling you to do this in the day of Yahuah. Because that's the day where it's going to be made possible for you to do that. How are you going to go into a land and you have two opposite governments over there? You have the Ashkenazi Israeli government, you have the Palestinian government. You're the true people, you don't have a government over there at all. Is this making any kind of sense to y'all?
You need a passport.
Hold on, stop. I said, I wasn't even gonna go there. You need a what?
Need a passport.
How you need a passport to go back to your land? Do y'all know what that's a sign of? You're in captivity, and you have no business over there, because when it's time for you to go back to the land, you ain't gonna need no passport. You know what your passport gonna be? His right hand, his strong arm, because he gonna be dealing with the nation. Matter of fact, what happened when they was in Assyrian captivity? What did Darius do? I mean Cyrus.
Send him back to build the temple.
Didn't he come forth? He said, the Elohim of Israel have given me all the nations or kingdoms of the earth. If the Most High don't send it to witness, he'll always deal with the leader who have you in captivity. He'll raise that leader up of that nation, and guess what? He'll come forth and make a proclamation. It's time for y'all to go. Then Cyrus stand up and make a proclamation. Then Darius did it again. The same thing. You cannot find in the scriptures at any time when Israel left captivity early. Israel left captivity and fled back in the land without instructions. Y'all know the Most High don't work like that. Didn't he say let everything be done in decency and in order? Will he give us that command and he not do things in order?
That's right.
That's why he said in that day. Now what we're fixing to do now, let's go to Isaiah the 11th chapter, verses 10 through 15.
Isaiah what chapter?
The 11th chapter,
10 through 14.
10 through 15. You got it, go ahead. You hear me? You get Hosea, the 2nd chapter, 16 through 23. And you got Joel.
Isaiah 11. You ready?
Yeah, Joel 3.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, everybody ready?
11, verse 10 through 15. Verse 10. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse.
And what now?
And in that day
And in that day,
there
this
shall
is the prophet Isaiah, and in that day, you know, Jeremiah always spoke about that day, in that day. Let's see what Isaiah have to say about that day.
there shall be a root of Jesse which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
He shall stand for what?
An ensign.
Y'all know what an ensign is? A flag, or like, yeah,
Go with DC, banner.
or a warning, an example, something like that.
Oh, okay. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the sovereign shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
Start right now. He said he's going to set his hand what?
Again, a second time.
When is he going to do it?
In that day.
In that day. So if he's going to set it again a second time, guess what has already happened with that hand?
Had delivered.
It hadn't already delivered and been set for a time before. Read that again.
And it shall come to pass in that day
In that day,
that the sovereign shall set his hand again the second time.
he shall set his hand what?
Again the second
time.
to recover the remnant of his people.
No, the remnant of his people going to recover themselves, deliver themselves.
To recover the remnant of his people.
And he said he going to do what? A second time.
In that day he shall set his hand to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt.
Go back to the verse before that.
Verse 10. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse,
there should be a root of Jesse.
which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
Now, who is this root of Jesse he's talking about? Y'all don't do that.
Yashra'al,
Okay.
man.
Please don't do that, y'all. Y'all scared me then. Go ahead, Al.
You want me to answer?
You were asking up?
Yeah. Anybody. Go ahead, Aki.
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the sovereign shall set his hand again the second time.
He's going to set his hand again the second time.
To recover.
So if he set his hand again the second time, what has already happened? He's done set it for the first time or a time before. Go ahead.
To remove the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hanath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
Who's doing all of this?
Yahuah.
Okay, then, or is Israel, are we doing all of this ourselves?
Right.
He's doing this. It's very important. Y'all notice why I keep sticking to in that day? Because it started out with the he-goat, when he telling them to get out of Babylon and all that. Yeah, he telling them to do that, but if you keep reading, he telling them when to do it, in that day. You see now, as we keep reading what happens in that day, and how it's possible for them to be able to deliver themselves? Because he's dealing with the nations in the same day. Just like he did with Pharaoh. Go ahead.
Verse 13. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. But they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They shall spoil them of the east together. They shall lay their head upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. And the sovereign shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea. And with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the seven streams, and shall make men go over dry shod. And there shall be an highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that came up out of the land of Egypt.
So you see how everything's still being compared when we came up out of Egypt? Y'all still see the same pattern, right? This is what I'm trying to show y'all. That's why he said there's no new thing under the sun. He's declared the end from the beginning. This is very important to see, because you're going to see this pattern throughout. You have to be able to develop and see patterns throughout the prophecies and the scriptures. So if we come with anything else opposite of that, we have to be able, okay then, you know what? I don't reject anything anybody say. I listen to them. But guess what the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to see how it lines up with what was written. So if somebody tells you that, okay then, go back and see if they can show you in scripture or show you that pattern. Because didn't he say out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses? That's why everything in here, this is why I call precept upon precept.